This is the 5-minute guide to the Kawachi class battleships of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The Kawachi was the first Japanese battleship that could arguably be called a dreadnought. Ironically, Japan could have been at the forefront of the dreadnought race, as the previous Satsuma class had been designed with the same principles of a unified main battery in mind. As with most first-generation dreadnoughts, the broadside would have been 8 guns of 12-inch caliber, although the plan was to have a pair of twin turrets on the central line, one forward and one aft, one twin turret on each side and 4 single turrets, a pair on each side. This was substantially less efficient than just using twin turret layout, but shows how the design evolved from pre-dreadnoughts, effectively substituting main battery guns for the secondary weaponry common on the earlier ships. In the end, though, the Japanese could not manufacture enough 12-inch guns and had to use 10-inch guns for the wing turrets, making the Satsuma class a semi-dreadnought. The Kawachi class was an attempt to build a proper dreadnought on the second try. Due to this delay, the ships were built at the time when other navies were rolling out second-generation dreadnought designs. As a result, the first draft was actually quite advanced, with a pair of twin turrets fore and aft with 2 more turrets on the wing offset, to provide a limited capacity for a 12-gun broadside as per the latest British and German designs. However, the ship would have to be fairly long to accommodate this layout, and a local economic depression meant the Navy was short on cash. The design was revised, so the ship that was built used a hexagonal layout similar to the early German designs, a single twin turret fore and aft, and 2 on each side, although they at least incorporated other modern features such as turbine engines. A final feature incorporated at the last minute were longer guns. Reports reached the Japanese that the latest British battleships used guns that were 50 calibers long instead of the old 45 caliber standard. This would in theory give the guns longer range and higher shell velocity, which would increase armor penetration. In the end, it turned out these guns were not especially successful, and the British went to 13.5-inch weapons in short order instead, but this was not predictable at the time. But newer and better guns cost more money, so the Kawachi ended up only having these guns in the fore and aft turrets, the wing turrets having to keep the older 45 caliber weapons. Technically, this means the ships don't count as full dreadnoughts, because the ballistic performance of the main battery is different depending on the turret, which was exactly the problem the dreadnought style of design was supposed to address. However, since the caliber of the guns was at least uniform, it is reasonable to include these ships as the first Japanese dreadnoughts. This also makes Japan unique amongst the larger navies, in that they only had one class of 12-inch gunships, the next design being the Fuso class with 14-inch weapons. The class consisted of 2 ships, the Kawachi and Setsu, named after Japanese provinces in a tradition similar to the United States, France and Germany naming their ships after states using names like South Carolina, Nassau and Lorraine. Other navies chose different ways of naming their ships. In the Royal Navy, county names were used on larger cruisers, and battleships were named on a class basis either by theme, starting with the same letter, or whatever old ship names they felt like reusing. The Kawachi had a relatively short career, helping the pre-dreadnought Mikasa put out a deliberately started fire in her forward magazine, preventing the ship from blowing up in port for a second time in 1912, followed by action against the German colonial port of Tsingtao in 1914, after which she received a short refit. Then in 1918 she suffered an explosion in the magazine of the forward starboard turret whilst in harbour, capsizing in only 4 minutes with over 600 crew killed in the explosion or drowned. An investigation could not completely determine the cause of the explosion, although magazine explosions in port would account for a number of Japanese warships over the years. It was considered too expensive to refloat the ship, and the hull was partially dismantled before being left to serve as an artificial reef. The Setsu was slightly longer than her sister ship, having been given a clipper bow instead of the straight one installed on the Kawachi. This is the main way to tell the ships apart in photos. After taking part in the same bombardment of German territory in 1914, she received some refits of minor armament before being disarmed under the terms of the Washington Naval Treaty. She was then refitted with extra armor to serve as a target ship for smaller vessels to practice on, and also served double duty as a tug for larger ships. In this role she towed the hull of the unfinished battleship Tosa, which was a modified version of the Nagato class, out to sea for scuttling under the terms of the same treaty. After a brief period in the 1930s, when she was used as a radio-controlled target ship, she then saw service in a variety of different roles, transporting troops to China in 1937, then used to simulate American battleships, to help pilots train for the Pearl Harbor attacks, and then pretending to be the Japanese aircraft carrier fleet by simulating lots of radio traffic, to deceive Allied intelligence as to the location of the main Japanese force. After this burst of activity she was used as a training ship for carrier pilots to practice attacks on until in 1945 she was attacked by American Navy fighter bombers and damaged. She ran ashore for use and a barracks before being bombed again and abandoned. The hulk was eventually taken away for scrapping in 1946. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you want to see a particular ship or class reviewed, leave a comment below, and we will add it to the list.